how do you get down to the bottom line? And I think when we see some of these opportunities, the businesses are expecting us to action them. So as you sit here today and invest the time to understand, I was talking to a couple of our speakers before at the last break, and I said, oftentimes we're looking at our shoes, where we're going today, and we find ourselves that we've walked right into a dead end. We don't look about where we are in the mountains to go forward, we're looking about what we're doing today. And we hope that by listening to our speakers today, that you're going to have some new opportunities to rethink some of your processes, and that's all it's about. So without any further ado, Philip, why don't you come forward and talk to us about, turning big data into meaningful, actionable insights.
Thank you very much, Thank you very much for having me. Bardess is a consulting management company. We love analytics, and I'm very grateful to be here with Patrizio and Jeremy and Ron. You guys have been awesome. You guys have led the transformation here that is absolutely phenomenal, and we hope to get you on the stage at Strata or something, the Big Data Conference coming up soon, because these guys have really done a great job. So we like to bring the technology and the understanding on how to use it, but it's the vision that really counts. So unfortunately, bad weather in Florida really kind of messed up my slide, because I was really hoping that Falcon Heavy would launch last night. So 6:30 tonight, Falcon Heavy is going to launch. I love what these guys have done. In a way, I was thinking, what could I put up here as a kind of a view on the complexity of industry and manufacturing, but also kind of reveal what digital transformation really is like. And whether you like Elon Musk as a person or not, he's done a fantastic job with SpaceX and his other companies. And Bardess doesn't only just consult in this industry where you guys are. We do a lot of work in FinServ and in some other industries. And when it comes to digital transformation, we try and talk about three things. We stay away from the dictionary definition. Stay out of jail. It's all about compliance, regulations, GDPR, managing all that type of stuff. Making money, so that's new imagined processes, new products, better ways to engage with your customers and manage that whole customer journey. And then saving money, which is all about the efficiencies and all that. Now, you guys may reorder those three things, but they're still important, right? So the problem is transformation is hard most of the time, not because of a lack of data. This guy's got a lack of data here, but really it's not that there's lack of data. We actually are swamped. Most of these kinds of presentations start off with how much data we have. But if we talk about, I think Tom mentioned earlier around, all those reports and all those KPIs, how many engagements we have when we go to our customer and say, okay, we're ready to do it, and they're like, we don't have the data. What do you mean you don't have the data? Well, we have the data, but we don't have it ready, and we don't have it available, and it's not clean, and it's, I love weaponizing your data, imperfect data. That was really great by Amrish. So really, we didn't collaborate. I know Deb set up a Slack channel, but we didn't collaborate on our slides, but what I'm seeing through all the speakers and all the themes is we're all really saying the same thing. So let me give you a little story. This guy, Steve Callahan, sailed across the Atlantic in 1982 and got hit by a whale, and his sailboat sunk. I don't know why he's going in a 21-foot sailboat. That's a whole another story. But he spotted 9 ships. None of them saw him. And eventually he was found. He kind of washed up on the beach in Guadalupe and was part of the advisory team for the Life of Pi. and he survived on less than a pint, or just over a pint of water a day, using a solar still and collecting rainwater. And the point being, we have tons and tons and tons of data. The ocean is a vast place, and yet he only had just over a pint of water a day for 76 days on average. But he survived. It's a great book if anyone wants to read that. I actually have hopefully a trip coming up soon to Bermuda this summer with some kids that we're taking there. I'm going to teach them how to use a real sextant, not some pencils, and see where we're at. So this is a satellite picture from Monday. If you imagine yourself standing on the deck of a boat and looking at the horizon with perfect visibility, you can see about 3 or 4 miles. That's the edge of where you can see to the horizon. So think of yourself in a circle with a diameter of about 8 miles. That's not even a pixel on this high-res photo. So that just shows you the vastness of the ocean out there. And that's, unfortunately, what most of us have. We have tons and tons of data. We have it sitting somewhere. In this case, it's a data lake, because everyone wants a data lake now. Got to have a data lake. But it brings no value if it sits in the data lake unanalyzed. In fact, Deloitte, I should have got a quote from you rather than Deloitte, I apologize. But, the biggest problem with most of these initiatives that we're talking about here is extracting from that salty water, that bad data, extracting the value of something that can be used, right? So let's talk a little bit about the solar still that Steve Callahan used. It's a device, you let it float on the sea next to you in your life raft. You put some seawater in it, uses energy from the sun to evaporate that seawater. It condenses on the outside, and then just by its design, that condensed water runs down the outside and collects, and it's fresh on the inside. So it takes a little bit of energy, takes some careful planning, but it works. And then, of course, collecting rainwater. And when you read the book, you will understand that is a mission in and of itself, to be always ready for when that rain comes, right? And have the tarps out, have them clean, because you don't want to waste if you're only going to get 5 minutes of rain in a quick rainstorm, and that's all got salty water on that's dried on the top, that's going to contaminate the fresh water that comes. So how do you keep it ready to be useful when the time comes? So I think one of the key aspects that needs to happen when industry goes through this kind of revolution, when companies themselves are in this journey of transformation, is really, it's all about the democratization of data. So every aspect of the data needs to be democratized. In other words, there shouldn't be silos where only a few people understand and know the data, right? And can use the data. I put 3 barriers down. So the first one is just discovering what data you have. Can you imagine spending 90% of your time actually to build a report, actually recreating data that you already have? What about once you have that, spending 80% of that time before you can make it useful on data prep? And I know that's been a big thing for SDI here. They've cut that time in like not even in half. I don't want to give their numbers away, but they've done a fantastic job just taking that lead time for preparation of the data and democratized it and made that data ready and useful for analytics in a very, very short time. And then the last one there, providing insights at the point of consumption, is really the last mile, right? And I couldn't find that quote, so that quote is from me. So let's talk a little bit about discovery of data. I'm not talking about data discovery the way some of the vendors are positioning it already in a tool. I'm talking about understanding what data assets you have. I was at a very big financial services company recently, and they have metadata harvesting tools that look on the network. So we're not just talking about what's in the database, right? They're looking at what's in the spreadsheet, what Deb might be using for her marketing and outreach to customers. There's PII information in there, right? Email addresses, people's phone numbers, in an Excel spreadsheet. Can we look inside these files and understand what kind of data we have? How do we onboard that data? Some of this data is unstructured, some of it is structured, some of it's in multiple data sources. So being able to understand where it is and how we get at it is all about onboarding. And then profiling it. What kind of data is this? What structure is it in? Can we use some of Peter's definitions for data quality here? You know, can we bounce that data up against a standard and determine if it's useful or not? How do we enrich this data? So that was one of the ones on the previous presentation, is data enrichment, right? And then finally, can we build a business glossary that we can share with everyone within the organization? So when we say we're talking about a supplier, they know exactly what that entity means. When we talk about a part number, I'm using your terms here, but those are maybe the easy ones. But what about KPIs? What about some of the measures you use to measure success? What about some of the specific organizational, the linguistics and the words you guys use to describe your business? That needs to be part of the culture, and it needs to be part of the data and the understanding of what that data is. What can you do when you've done all this stuff? What are some of these things? Well, you can start having some level of data governance, right? You can understand who in my organization has access to what data from a security point of view. You can also certify some of the data assets, saying, you know what? Maybe for this use case, we can tolerate a certain data quality that we may not want to tolerate when it comes to a different, more specific use case. If I'm placing an order, the part number better be right, the price better be right, the address that I send it to, ship to, all that better be right. But if I'm sending, if I'm doing an outreach to customers, from a marketing point of view, maybe my tolerances on my data quality can be lower. And that brings up these ideas of data perspective. So we used to focus on the single golden record with MDM. And it was hard, but because the standard is very high. But there are many, many, many use cases within organizations to use data that is of lower quality and may not meet the standard of a golden record, but can still be very, very useful. And then finally, entity resolution, identifying suppliers, part numbers, locations, addresses, employees, customers. And we have a capability of doing entity resolution and joining using an inference engine of about 75 million matches an hour with on the data lakes that we've been doing for some of our customers, right? So this is huge, because what it does is it immediately gets you out of jail. So I know that maybe not a big thing in your industry, but if you're a bank, you know, privacy laws are coming. And it was interesting to see that the fraud, there's more fraud in the supply chain maybe than anti-money than laundering that goes through maybe the banks. So if that's true, you know, there's going to be some scrutiny there too, right, Srini? So that's CCPA. That's a California privacy regulation. Every state is going to be having privacy regulations soon. So that's interesting. That's a stay out of jail. The next one, Customer 360, is really what we're doing for a lot of organizations around the customer journey. understanding, being able to do this inference matching, being able to tie all these components of data together automatically and give you a confidence score on how well that match has been done is key to that customer 360. You know, if you go into almost everybody, I'm sure, has had a poor customer experience. So you always wonder, well, my bank, you couldn't believe what my bank did today, or my dealership where my car is. They don't even know that I've got a new car, or whatever. There's a lot of examples of these companies where customer service is really bad. But if you can start to anticipate your needs of your customers, be able to do next best action, be able to recommend products and part numbers and stuff ahead of time, being able to say, hey, you got this last time, how about we suggest these 3 things that go along with that because that makes sense, and being able to leverage that for a seamless customer experience is what we can do. This stands for anti-money laundering. Again, it's just a flip on the same thing, being able to have that entity resolution. It's very important in the financial services industry to KYC, know your customer, regulations around that, but why wouldn't you guys want to know your customers, right? So, and then of course, robotic process automation. We've got actually a lot of examples of robotic RPA that went wrong. Like, oh, I've got a whole bunch of business processes that are broken, and humans do. Let me make a bigger mess by automating this, and let's see what happens there, right? So get the data clean, get the data understood, and essentially build this idea of both synthesis, which is the matching and the kind of linking of data, with reasoning, which is really the context, building the context around that data. So the next barrier was preparation. How do we prepare data? This little workflow is our own little Bardess workflow, but I think it's kind of synonymous with pretty much anybody who processes data. Amarish, I think you had a very similar one in your preparation of data with your 4 or 5 slides of things there, but we talk about ingesting data. So this is going and finding it and actually bringing it into the platform, preparing it. Again, this is the big one here, 80% of the time. And after that, discovering it, analyzing it, modeling it, building the modeling. Often it can be both supervised and unsupervised learning to really understand what needs to be done, building predictive models on that, and then operationalizing that. I won't tell you how many companies out there say they're doing ML and AI in a lab, not on real data. It's not driving their business processes. It's not operationalized. So operationalizing those machine learning models as soon as possible is where the real value lies. Just because you say you've got a data scientist or you're doing ML or AI, it doesn't mean that you're actually getting a business benefit from it. And then, my little curve here, Travis, who wasn't here, you can talk to him a little bit later, criticized that even during the data prep time, the value decreases. I probably agree with him, but the point is the perception to the analyst who's in the midst of data prep, it feels like it's never going to end. So from that point of view, the value does decrease. But once you can complete the data prep, the value is incredibly valuable to your company. Okay, final one is delivery. If we think of paper reports, I don't know if we should ask if there's a show of hands who still use paper reports. Excel, I know that was come under some fire already today. But yeah, these are incredibly ungoverned, inflexible ways of presenting data. I've actually been to customers recently that monthly produce a book, looks like a little phone book, about this thick, and they give it to all the senior managers and stuff, and they literally, like, I'm saying, what do you use in this book? Well, I go to page 66, And I look in the third column, halfway down the page, that's a number, get those 5 numbers there, around about that area. That's the whole book is printed, and that's how they get their management reports. Excel is similar, and probably even a little bit more dangerous, because everyone comes to the meeting with a different number, right? Now, data visualization tools are great, but when they live on top of ungoverned data like that, they can be incredibly dangerous. What do they say about statistics? Yeah, okay, you all know the quote, right? So you can make it say whatever you want it to say. But having data visualization on a governed data model is where the real value starts to kick in. And what we're really seeing now is intelligent interfaces. So yeah, I mean, visualization is cool, but you need a certain level of data literacy within your organization to consume that. You have to go to a screen and log on to a dashboard to go and read that chart and make sense of it. How about I just use Slack or Teams or Skype and I just chat with a chatbot that happens to be linked to my dashboard, uses the same data model. What is my spend this month on this part number? Boom, it replies. So we have natural language processing capabilities that can do this. These tools exist right now that people can interact and discover and have these intelligent interfaces and communicate with themselves and with their colleagues where one of the parties in that collaboration is an artificial intelligence. I don't know, well, none of you will know this, but I actually use a chatbot to plan all my meetings and schedule things on my calendar. And I can go and look how Amy, my artificial assistant, has spoken to my customers. She's pretty polite most of the time, and all the time. And she can interact with my calendar, negotiate times with them, and put things on my calendar. And she's incredibly helpful, and she saves me hours and hours every week, right? And that's just setting up calendar invitations. When there's 3 or 4 people in a meeting, and I have to start figuring out when am I free, when are they free, and then we get to the 4th guy, and now it's like we have to start again. So intelligent interfaces are a key thing. They're right here, they're available right now, and this is how you push that last mile of really pushing the data and the value of data into all parts of the organization. You got to push data to the edges of the organization, to the shop floor. You got to put the data in the hands of everybody in the organization. It's no longer an ivory tower requirement that just the managers get the books, and they're the ones who are smarter than everybody else that can make decisions about the company. Digital transformation requires or expects that this is a pervasive culture, that you push this knowledge and this information in the format that's consumable at the place of consumption directly to the right people. So let me walk you through how we would put together a solution from an analytics point of view. So we already talked about this foundational layer of discovery. Some kind of data catalog is becoming more and more essential in conversations with all our customers. Data is just too big to curate. You need this tribal knowledge. You need this human-in-the-loop curation process. This idea that Amaresh, you were talking about, you have these occasional spurts of where you go and get your data clean, and then just like entropy, it becomes it over time loses its quality. What you need some kind of human in the loop where the machines and the AI and the ML algorithms are working with people, and the subject matter expertise of the humans and the decision making of humans directly influences those algorithms and says, you know what, this is a good part number. And when John says there's a good part number, then it gets a high score. Someone in, who knows nothing about part numbers, they shouldn't have an influence on the algorithm. That can all be tuned and tweaked. But just the automation of collecting all that information, harvesting that data, cataloging that information is becoming more and more of an essential piece. So consider that foundational. The next thing that needs to be considered is where you're going to put all this data. Tom, you pointed out siloed systems are one of the biggest problems, right? Hundreds and hundreds of systems, data all over the place, account numbers, customer numbers, part numbers, supplier IDs, everything in different systems with different numbering conventions, different descriptions. How do I make sense of all that of all that? Being able to standardize that is good in the systems, but you still may need to put all that data in a single place in order to be able to really bring it together and break the barriers down between the different systems. The other part of it is that's just the storage, right? We now with the cloud can separate storage from compute, and this can save a lot of time and money. So we also need to be able to process data. We need to be able to do something to that data to make it valuable. So a platform that's capable of storage and processing is essential. I talk a little bit about schema on read. I don't want to get too technical with folks here, but basically, databases that are very rigid and expect data in a certain way are great from a structure point of view, but that may hinder your ability to put data into a platform and extract value out of it from an analytics. So what you need is a flexible approach where data quality and the value of data is known inside the platform, but you can accept any kind of data. And that's essentially schema on read, where you have the ability to even ingest data types like video and unstructured data and text documents. We're actually doing right now for the government of Ontario in Canada work on the laws and the impact that laws have on individuals and on businesses, this kind of legislative burden. So our data scientists are doing NLP work on this unstructured data to kind of quantify that legislative burden. You need the place where unstructured data can be stored. The next one is data prep. At Bardess, we call it data shaping because some of the vendors are like they lay claim to data prep. Is Reardon here from Trifactor? He's not here, so I thought he was going to be on the list. Okay, he calls it data wrangling. So anyway, all these are great names. You all get it. You do it right now with your Excel spreadsheets. You take your data. It never is the way you like it when you get it, so you have to do something to it to make it better, right? That's data shaping or data prep. Visual analytics, we talked a little bit about that. That's the delivery mechanism to deliver that data to the desktop, to the decision makers, and help them essentially put them in a position to make the informed decisions. And then finally, the advanced analytics piece. Your platform needs to be able to be capable of leveraging the innovation in the open source space. That's where the innovation is happening right now. If your platforms are closed, if your platforms don't leverage the innovation that's happening in that open source libraries where all the data scientists are now collaborating with one another and building these machine learning algorithms, then you're going to be boxed in from a vendor point of view. This kind of architecture or this kind of roadmap can be applied to any analytics project. And the key thing is you guys own the data. Never give your data to a third party to do some of the stuff for it, because data is the new gold, or data is the new bacon, someone would say, and owning that data for future use is a strategic advantage to you. Too many vendors out there are offering to do this forecasting for you, or run this algorithm for you, and all that. And at the time, it seems like a cheaper, easier way to get some bang for your buck. And I'm not saying it's not a good place to start, but make sure you get the data back. Your data, it's your data, and you have no idea how valuable it'll be and what kind of use cases you'll be able to support in the future if you don't own your own data. So we've done a couple of things. We've chosen some products and some technologies. We have a best-of-breed approach for storage and processing. We use Hadoop. SDI is a big Cloudera customer. Trifactor for the data shaping. Click we use for the visual analytics. And we use DataRobot as an automated machine learning platform for the democratization of machine learning, right? That doesn't mean there aren't specialized use cases where you have a single algorithm or a couple of algorithms doing something special that may not use DataRobot, but DataRobot can certainly do both supervised and unsupervised learning as well as time series data. So we call that 0 to hero because it takes you guys from that maybe that Excel guy on the screen from 0 to being analytics heroes in a very, very short time. We can do this in 60 days, and we define it as a pre-built data processing and analytics stack of exceptional tools. That means we're actually tool agnostic. You come to us and tell us, well, we got a different flavor of Hadoop, or we use Tableau, no problem. The main thing is to remember that value chain and realize that you need at least one kind of technology in each one of those components. That's the key thing. That's how you solve these problems. You start at the visualization layer only, and you end up putting that on top of spreadsheets, and it's just taking a step back. You need to understand that the governance of those models and the curation of that data and the supply chain of data to that visualization tool are key, right? And of course, like I said, with the RPA example, with Bank and some others, just doing machine learning on bad data is not a good idea. So exceptional tools, you choose your tools or we help you choose them for you. Bardess accelerators, that means we figured out how all these technologies work together. We find a lot of customers having to learn how to be, figure us out from scratch. And they spend a lot of cycles thinking, well, which technology should I buy? They make they make choices and then find that some of these don't integrate well for whatever reason, and they spend most of their time trying to troubleshoot how all these integrations work. We've already solved all of those. And then we load it often with preloaded with relevant industry data. Of course, we're solving problems at scale, and we deliver rapid value. That is, we can build that cluster and have it up and running in about 3 hours now. Travis is not in the room, right? Okay, 2 hours. And you can be playing with your data within a few days and building your own stuff. Again, the idea is democratize data, doing it in a way that immerses your organization in a culture of literacy of data, understanding data, making it transparent. Is it painful? Sure. Is it something that has worked? Absolutely, and we're very proud that SDI is one of our 0 to hero customers and have done a great job with that there. So that's me. Thank you very much.